Hello, my name is Nathan Batchelor, I'm the Average Animator, and I'm going to be teaching you how to rig this character using Rigify. Now, this is an old model, believe it or not, and Pixar used to use this model for training their students in their classes. And so I was able to get access to this model. You can actually get it for free online. And I have a link to this Blender scene in the description, so you'll be able to follow along. So this will be part one in a multi-part series, and for this video, I'm just going to be focusing on placing all the bones and generating the rig. So before we get that started, we're going to want to go ahead and go to the collections, and as you can see, we got all the mesh items here. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean this up a little bit first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this Norman, and then I'm going to go ahead and take all the mesh items and create a new collection. I'm going to call this Mesh. I'm going to take that, put it under Norman. This is all to make sure everything is clean in the outliner, and because when you're rigging, you always want to make sure you have a clean outliner. And also we'll go ahead and create a new collection, and we'll call this Rig. And so this is where all the rigging stuff is going to go. So we'll go ahead, hit Shift A, and go to Armature, and we're going to generate Human Meta Rig. As you can see, we got this little rig down here now, and we're going to go ahead and scale that up. Now, something I like to do is I like to go ahead and scale it from the 3D cursor. Reason I like to do this is because then I don't have to reapply the transformations if I scale it in object mode. So now we got it scaled up, and I'll go ahead and show you how I go about my placement. Now, a little thing about Rigify is it's actually very nice because there's sometimes you don't need extra bones here. So for example, these are pectoral bones. You don't need this for this particular rig, but of course this is very nice for other rigs. And you go ahead and want to turn on X-axis in your editing mode so that whatever you do to one side of the rig will be done to the other. So we can go ahead and delete this and delete this. Those are the hip bones. We're not going to need those. And then we'll go ahead and get to placing down our joints. So here's how I like to go about this. What I like to do is I like to switch back and forth between the mesh and the rig. What I like to do is select areas where I want it and hit Shift S, cursor to selected, then I'll select the rig, Shift S, selection to cursor. And that way everything is snapped in place and everything is clean. So we'll go ahead and do this for the rest of the joints and get this done. So you go ahead and you want to make sure you have your heel bone, well, on the heel, have it as nice as you can. What I like to do is to hold Control and Shift so I can better dial in the location for these bones and whatnot. And if you go in and zoom in further, you can even be more specific. And what's nice about this is you don't always have to be perfect with your placement. All you have to do is sometimes you just got to be good enough. Alright, so for this, I'll go ahead and try to make this more in line with the placement. So what I'll do is I'll select these, Control I, H, and then that way I'll be able to make sure these toes are in line with this. So let me see. Yes. Here's what I'll do. Go to 3D cursor, scale, X, 0. And so this is how you can flatten things out. You can do this to meshes as well. Then I'll Alt H, everything is back. And you can see it's mirrored on the other side. Let me see if it is. Alright, perfect. And so I like to just go around and make sure everything is placed nicely. And so for this, I'll go ahead and select that bottom vertex there. And so most of the video is going to be me just placing everything. And so I just find the center vertices and just keep doing this. A little nice thing you can do is if you hit select a mesh and then having your cursor on said mesh, hit L, this will select everything that's connected to that mesh, and then we can hide that. And I am just double clicking on the lines in order to do a loop selection. I forget whether this is something you have to enable or not, but it works fine for me. It's wonderful. It's something you can do in Maya, I believe. And you just keep going on. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. This is a fairly relaxing process, actually. Alright, so as you could probably tell by the number of videos on my channel, I'm fairly new to this tutorial stuff. So if there's anything you guys like to learn, or anything specific I can show you, well, just leave me a comment and let me know. I'm happy to learn. I want to get something of a little channel going. And yeah. Oh, hold on. Hide that. Ah. Okay, that's better. Boom. Select boom, boom, boom. Ah! Well, there's nothing wrong with that. So we'll go ahead and move to the arms now. Now we're finished with the torso. And you just keep going on and selecting these bones and whatnot. Now for the shoulders, we don't necessarily have to snap them to these bones right here. They just have to be in a placement for shoulders. And so I'll go ahead and leave them around here. And it'll be fine because once the rig is generated, it'll still follow the shoulders because they're still parented. The arms will still follow. And I might reposition them later. So anyway, just keep going through. Selecting the center of these spheres is one of the reasons I want to rig this character in particular, because the mesh structure is very, very simple. And so this would make it very easy to rig, especially with Rigify. Alright, and so now we got the fingers. Now this is where some fun comes in. By fun, I mean a little extra work. So we can go ahead and place them here, get a general idea. So what we're going to do now is straighten out the hand first. So in order to straighten this hand out, what we're going to do is hit the period on your keyboard and hit individual origins, and then we'll hit scale S, Y, 0. And then we'll do S, Z, 0. So this will zero out the transformations on the position on the Y and Z axis. Then we'll go ahead and start playing around with the fingers and all their positioning. And so I'm not going to worry too much about being perfect with these positions at the moment and just getting them out of the way. Then we'll go ahead and get started with the pinky. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select all this and Shift H. I'll hide everything else, that way I don't have to worry about other stuff. And so in order to snap to these menus, I have a number keypad, and so it allows me to go to the front, the left, and if I hold control in the numbers, I can do the inverse. So I'm hitting 1, 3, and 7 a lot. And if I hold control 1, 3, it'll do the opposite. So naturally, control 1, backwards, control 3, the left, control 7, the bottom. This just makes maneuvering easier for me. And so what we'll do here, so we'll try to make sure we have a good placement for the pinky, for the palm. So this bone here is going to be the palm. So it'll be something to roll your fingers with, so to speak. I can tell you about that later. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to this magnet here. And we're going to go to volume. And so we'll enable this. So this will snap to volume. And so what we want is we want this to snap to the center. So what this will do, now that this is active, is when we hit G to move, it'll snap to the center of the volume. And so that'll be the center of the mesh. We'll do that here as well. Whoops. So wherever you put it, wherever there's a mesh, it'll be in the center. And so this is really, really nice, especially when you're positioning the bones for the fingers especially. So we want to make sure that these are positioned well. And also this will be, I just realized, this will also snap based on the projection on the camera space. So since I'm looking down like this, it'll be projected to the center from here. But if you do it from the center, from the front, it'll project from the front. So make sure you're looking down on it when you're doing this. And so you just go ahead and make sure you got all the right placement. And then go ahead and look to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off for a minute. There's actually a hotkey to turn this magnet on and off. It's Shift Tab. It's something I like to use. I'll go ahead, turn that back on. And since I'm looking from the side here, the projection works just fine. And if we'll look, we can see that the placement is fairly good. Though I think I'm gonna move these bones back a little bit. So we're looking down on it again. That's about right. And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to Shift S cursor to selected, select all these, and set my origin to 3D cursor. I'll turn this off. Scale Y 0. And now that I've done this, I'll look down, hit rotate, and then I'll shift dial this in so that everything's right. And then I'll select all these bones and hit Alt R. This will zero out rotations. We'll worry about, you know what, forget that. We'll worry about rotations later, but let's go ahead and repeat the same process for the rest of the fingers. Now I'm having some of the bones visible just so I can have them somewhat unified, so I don't have to keep hiding and non-hiding bones. But now that we have that, I'll go ahead and go back. Now sometimes what's nice is you can go ahead and go here, we have Show Overlays, and go to Geometry, Wireframe. That way you can know how to better position your bones. So you notice I'll reposition the bones to where there's more vertices here. It's better to have the joints here rather than out here, so I can do better deformations. Oh yeah, another thing. Save. Make sure you save your file. Alright, so I mentioned we'd go back to the fingers for a second to talk about rolling. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to turn on axes so we can see the axis of our bones. So here's what we want to do. We want to make sure that all the bones are rotated with the x-axis facing down. Kind of like this. And so as you can see, most of them are like that. Some of them need adjustment here. So we'll go ahead and select these bones, the pinkies. We'll hit Shift R, Alt R I mean, and that makes it so that it zeroes out all rotations. And we'll go ahead and look on the right side here. Ooh, that's not right. It shouldn't look like that. So what we'll do is we'll hit Control R and allow you to rotate the bones, and I'm holding Control to snap it. And we try to get these as level as possible. And you're going to want to do this with the rest of the fingers here. Select them, Alt R. You know, in some cases it might be better to just not Alt R. They're already pretty straight. So I'm hitting Shift H to hide everything else besides the selected, and then Alt H to unhide everything. Probably should have mentioned that earlier. So this one actually looks pretty good. Might adjust one of them. No, you know, I think this is good. Might adjust this. You can also hold Shift when you're rotating it. And as for the thumb, we kind of want the bones to be... kind of want the x-axis pointing to the right a little bit, because that's how the thumbs bend. Alright, so that should be done with that hand right here. Go ahead and save again. Oop! Almost forgot. Let's go ahead and select all the palms. So these bones right here, these will be your palm. And we're going to go ahead and global median point and just hit scale Z 0 and scale X 0. That way everything is clean. And I'll just go ahead and lift this up right around. Another thing to remember, whenever you're moving your bones around, ooh, those things will need to be adjusted. Let's go ahead and straighten these out real quick. And just hit R, Control R, Control R. Oh, here. Let me just select all this. That's better. Alright, and this should be around okay. Let's go ahead and have a little flow here. Alright, that's about good. So this hand should now be done and ready for generating. What we're going to do, go ahead and just save. And let's go ahead and... oh yeah, and since we did everything on this side, since we had the mirror enabled, everything was done on the left. And so all of that is nice and clean. So we'll go ahead and grab the shoulders, work on this. I said we'd get back to this. You don't have to do much here, so we'll just rotate a little bit using Control R. And I'll go ahead and position this so it's somewhat in the middle. You know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll select the mesh here, snap that to the cursor there, and then I'll just bring it down a little bit. And that way, it'll be in the center of the mass, and I can still reposition it as I like. But you know, I just remembered something. Because of how this mesh is, a little thing about rigging is you want to keep in mind the geometry of your mesh. So as you can see, this will be rotating on the x-axis like this. Hold on. Come work with me. All right. This will be rotating on the x-axis like this. So with this particular rig, the mesh will deform in that direction. So with normally with other meshes, you're going to want to do that, especially with humanoid meshes. However, for this particular mesh, I think it'll work just fine if we go ahead and snap it to the middle here. So let's just, whoops, not that. So let's just select the neck, select the middle of these here, snap it there. Select our rig, snap it there. Oh, you know, that's not quite right. I want this to follow the mesh entirely, so I'll go ahead and snap it to this vertex. Now if we look at that, we can see that it's following the mesh just fine. And we'll go ahead and rotate this x-axis like that, and this should be fine. This should actually work just fine. I know it looks a little bit weird. We might adjust it later, but I think this will be good. This will work just fine, because then the shoulder will come up just like that. So what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna go ahead and rotate this as well. So we'll just go ahead and rotate the arms so that they're you know what, you can actually just zero out your rotations with Alt-R here, and it'll actually zero it out fairly nicely. And what we'll do is we'll hit Control-R and we'll rotate it. We can go ahead and hit 90, and if you put a minus in there, that way our bone, we want the x-axis to be facing down, and in this case facing up. It'll be just fine here, it's just mirrored over. So right now the body should be fairly good, and we're not going to generate the bones just yet. We'll go ahead and do that. You know what? Let's go ahead and generate the bones. So what's really nice about Rigify is it's something you can generate over and over and make little tweaks with. So here's what I mean. So you don't need to worry about upgrade face rig yet. We can worry about that later. But make sure you save a different file. You always want to save, and save a lot. We'll generate the rig. And then as you can see, we've got this lovely rig here, but what's really, really nice about this rig, about Rigify, is if you, let's say I don't like the position of these shoulders so much. I mean, it's not how I want it to be, it's weird. So here's what I can do. I can actually go back to the meta rig, click on that, and I can tweak it. So let's say I want the shoulders lower. I'll just bring them down like that. Get out of edit mode, and then I can go and regenerate the rig, and it'll reposition everything based on the new position of those bones. And what's also really, really nice is if you've already parented the mesh to the rig, it'll actually maintain the same weights that you already had prior, and you will not be required to update the weights. And that's something that's really, really nice. And I can't tell you how many times that saved me time, so I don't have to repaint the weights and everything. So what we'll do is we'll just hide this, keep it hidden for now. I'll undo and keep the position as it is, because I like that position. And I'll just go ahead and go back here. So it's just the mesh, just the rig. So now we're gonna go ahead and position the bones on the face. Now, I understand it might be daunting for some, but it's actually not that hard. All you need to do is go to your snapping tool, and now you're gonna, instead of snapping to volume, like we did for the fingers, we're gonna do face project. So you'll do face project, and you'll snap to the closest. And so what this will do is when you are repositioning your bones, so nothing is, so it's, the snapping mode's not enabled quite yet. I'm just gonna go ahead and hide the head bones. And to be honest, everything else. Alright, that's much nicer. Get a general position for everything. And here's what we'll do. Go ahead and turn your snapping on, and then start moving. You'll see that it snaps right onto the face wherever it is, based on the location of your camera. And this is wonderful. This is such a time saver. I remember trying to use Rigify without knowing about this prior, and now that I know, this just saves me so much time. Anyway, so here we have the tongue rig. We're gonna go ahead and hide the tongue rig right now. We'll hide these bones. These are for your teeth. We can worry about that later. And we'll go ahead and start positioning our bones here. So this is our jaw. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the snapping tool off for the moment and just go ahead and position this by myself. What's a good thing to do is, if you don't know what a bone is or what it does, because you know we have a lot of bones here, you hit F2, it'll tell you what the bone is. And so you can see that this is the chin, and that this is the jaw, and so this is just really nice. And so for the jaw, we're gonna wanna position it near the ear, in the center, right around there. And the chin, we'll go ahead and position right about here. Now there's a bunch of other wonderful things you can do with Rigify, and there's a lot more customizability with this rig than you'd think, but I'm going to focus largely on the default rig at this time, and I might cover that in a separate video. So at this point, it's actually not a bad idea to generate the rig here and there, because then you can see where your bones are positioned and if it's somewhere that you'd like it to be positioned. And so this is something that's really good to do. And so we'll go ahead and just start positioning all the bones. This is part of the jaw. I do believe you can actually delete these bones and it should generate just fine. Nope. All right, so you need the jaw bones there. And so of course you can't get rid of everything, otherwise the rig won't work. And so we'll go ahead and position it right about there. Keep this near the middle. Could I delete the chin? All right, unfortunately, no, you cannot. It's always good to regenerate it over and over again to check, because sometimes you might make a mistake and you just simply can't use the same rig anymore. And so it's always good to keep double checking, make sure you've got it all right. That's right, I had the snapping tool on, so I go ahead and turn that off for the moment. And so for the placement of the lips and such, you learn it as you go, but obviously you kind of get the middle of the lips here. Keep that in the center. So for this, we'll go ahead and go to the side and turn off our snapping. Put it around there. For this, since it's being difficult, I'll just go ahead and put it like this. And so you're going to want to have these bones close together for the sake of continuity. Around the same position here. Now, I do think you might be able to delete some bones from the nose. I've got a few extra bones here that I typically don't care for. Nope. Alright, you gotta keep it all. No. I don't like these extra nose bones, but It is what it is. So you can see I am positioning the bones specifically where vertices are because that'll help with the deformation. And we got some cheekbones here. Go ahead and position those right about there. This is your upper cheek. This is your lower cheek. Those right about there. So here we have some of the brow bones. Whoa, what are you doing there? That's better. So we'll go ahead and position those right there. But first, let's go ahead and get these. These are your upper brow. And so we'll just go ahead and position these near the top of here. These go near the top of the scalp. I want those to follow vertices right about there. So I'm making sure that these bones are on the same vertex line so that'll make sure the deformations are nicer. Honestly, it just makes the whole thing nicer. So these are the side jaw, these go up here. Oh, got the whole bone. Let's see, it's this, jaw left, temple. So this goes up to the side of the head like that. Now, as for the ear, the ears are actually a nice change. Because now, all you have to do is just snap. So let's go ahead and select the ear, select somewhere at the top, right here. S. Snap. Like that, right up there. Snap. Put it on here. Snap. Select it there. I think I might go over next. That's better. Alright, we got the ears. Alright, so we got the lips, the cheek. Got the temple right here. Now we're going to do the eyelids. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off snapping for a moment and just select all these bones and just roughly position them. So these are the inner bones here, and we got the eyelids right here. And the eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift H and hide this. The eye bone, we can worry about that later. And I'll just go ahead and position these bones. So go ahead and turn snapping back on. This goes near the middle. So this is almost good. Now, a little other thing about rigging is your rig will never be completely perfect, and so you don't need to stress and agonize so much over the perfect placement of every bone, but you want to make sure that they're good enough. So I'm a little more fastidious, so I like to be more particular with my positioning, but as you can see, I'm trying to kind of keep these perfectly above each other by selecting them both and then scaling them. Want to make sure they're following the same line. But again, a rig will never be perfect, so it's always best to just do your best. Ah! Ah, yes. Forgot something. I should bring these up a little higher. Oi, 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 oi. I want this to be on the lid itself. That's something I forgot. Because these bones will actually be controlling the blinking. Alright, so that's probably about good for the eyelids. And so now we'll go here. These are your inner eyelids. They just go underneath the... I meant inner brow. As you probably guessed, they go... Oh, whoa, 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 where are you? They just go underneath the brow here. Oh, you know what? Goes on the line. Okay, got most everything positioned. Now we just want to make sure we have the eye bones positioned. So all we need to do here, select our bones here, hide everything else. We'll select the eye bone, the eye mesh. So I'm gonna hit backslash. This allows you to isolate select. I forgot what this is called specifically. Hold on, what is it called? Toggle local view. This is what it's called. So we'll go ahead and select the center there, Shift S to cursor. Go back to our mesh, reposition the eye there. And we'll go ahead and go to individual origin and just scale that a little bit, or you can grab the end of the bone and bring it just in front. All right. So everything should be pretty good. Yeah, right about. We should have everything positioned more or less correctly. Make sure you save. Now, before we generate the rig, here's what we're gonna do. Now, I can get more into this on another video, but what's really, really nice about Rigify is you gotta make sure in your pose mode, if you go to your bone properties, you'll see that you got Rigify type. So Rigify has certain types of bones, certain types of limbs and controls and whatnot. And what you can do is select these and adjust the properties. So for the arm, you need to make sure you select this bone. So the main parent bone will have the rig type, and then you'll be able to adjust properties there. You can't select the forearm or the wrist. Oh, I missed the wrist. Gonna have to go ahead and change the rotation of that. Zero out rotations. Okay, I want it to match the same rotations as the other, so I'm going ahead and just... You know what? Actually, it'll be just fine to have the the wrist rotated like this. We actually want the x-axis like this. And if something's wrong, we can adjust it later. So we go to pose mode. It was stretching. It was a nice stretch. How long have I been recording? Almost an hour. Huh. This took longer than I thought. Anyway. So here's what we're going to do. You got a lot of nice properties here. I won't go into all of them now. But here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to set the rotation axis to manual X. So, little thing about this. Automatic means whatever the bend there is in your bone, that will be the angle at which it will bend. So, if I was to, say, have a bend in the bone like this, and generate the rig, you will see that if I go and start moving, the elbow is that way. And that's not what we want. Oi, go back. And so, if we pull it back like this, then naturally the rotation of the elbow will be this way. However, I want the placement here to remain the same. So how do we get it to do what we want so that it rotates this way? We go to pose mode, select the bone, rotation axis, manual X. And this, I think this applies to the other side. Nope, you're gonna have to adjust that manually as well. And we'll go ahead and generate the rig to see if everything is working just fine. And if we position everything, yep, the arms are moving the way we want them to. Perfect. Now we can go ahead and go back. And now we're going to do the same to the fingers. Now the fingers act the same. And so if you go to their properties, you'll see they have something similar, bend rotation axis. And it's also set to automatic. That's one of the reasons, that's the reason why I've wanted the axes to be specifically bent a specific way. So for all of the fingers here, I'm going to hit automatic, manual, I'm going to hit positive. And I'll go ahead and check it to see if that's correct. So we scale this. Yep, that's correct. So we'll just go back, go to our bone properties, and set the rotation axis to manual X. Make sure this is positive. Same with the thumb here. Generate. Oh, whoops. It looks like the pinky doesn't operate just fine. All right, let's go ahead and undo that. Ah, that explains it. It's inverted. So all we have to do here is hit Control R 180. Hold on, Control R 180. One moment. Control R 180. Control R 180, and then now it's upside down. If we go ahead and regenerate the rig, then now everything scales as they should. Everything rotates the way they should. Perfect. Now then I can see that we have a problem with the wrist here. Let me see. Alright, so I don't want the wrist to be positioned like that. So what we'll do go back, take this, and we'll go ahead and Control R, whoops, make sure you're in edit mode, Control R, 180. You know what? No, I want it to be like this. We can fix this later. It's actually pretty easy, all you need to do. Select, so the main thing I want is for this to rotate on the local axis like this, and it does. And so all I need to do to fix this position is go to the bone, display settings, rotation, the y-axis, and just hit 90 degrees. And now it'll rotate the way I want it to. It'll be positioned correctly. So anyway, make sure you save, save, save. You're also going to want to do the same thing to the legs here. You've got a bunch of fun little things going on here. So we'll go ahead and set the rotation axis to manual X as well. Do that here. Manual X. And we can see that the legs are operating the way we want them to. Wonderful. All right, now all we need to do is just repeat the same axis. It's just to repeat the same process we had with the fingers earlier. And just make sure primary rotation axis X. Here we are. I was selecting the palm by accident. Set that to manual X, manual X, manual X, manual X. Now let's generate it, make sure everything works. Let's see now. Perfect, they do. Now I forgot, need to do that on the thumb. Perfect. This is how we want it to be. Lovely. Okay. Okay, okay, okay. Now let me see here. Is there anything I'm missing? Alright, you may have noticed during the video that we have this thing called Upgrade Face Rig. Now this is something you can do on your own if you want. I don't think I'll go too much into it for this series, but what it does is if you hit Upgrade Face Rig, it adds a bunch more controls and joints. When we go ahead and generate that, you'll see we got a lot more stuff going on here than with the other stuff. Got all these extra bones and all these extra joints, which we can cover on another time. These are actually really, really nice, to be honest. But for this video, we can cover this for this video. I'll go ahead and cover the upgraded stuff for this, and we can go ahead and use this. But anyway, so now most everything is done for this part of the video. Now all we need to do is go ahead and just back up a little bit, save, make sure you got a new folder, generate rig, save. We'll just go ahead and grab these bones, and you can rotate these and you can reposition these however you'd like. I'm gonna go ahead and just rotate them on the y-axis there, 90 degrees, 90 degrees, and I'll go ahead and scale them on the z-axis, the y and z-axis, just like that. Perfect. And I'm gonna go ahead and select this bone, shift select this, Control C, have you make sure you have copy attributes add-on enabled, and then go to copy bone shape. It'll copy the same attributes. And so I think I'm good. I think we are good and ready to continue to the next part. I'll go ahead and cover weight painting with you guys later. And so that's the end of this first part. We got everything positioned. The rig is generated. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave it a like, share, subscribe, and let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see. All right, until the next video, bye-bye.